Hi, I'm Kacper. I would like to introduce you to the Draive framework, which is a Python framework for building applications based on the LLMs. You can set up the project by yourself using those commands, and we are going to start from the empty project based on the PyProject.tom configuration. So Python 3.12 is required, and the only dependency we have is the Draive framework with optional dependency to OpenAI, as we are going to use the OpenAI services in this video. Framework is fully typed, so it is also good to have a linter which understands typing like Python. Okay, so when we set up the environment and we have the Draive framework installed, we can go to the code. And here we are starting with the empty main function. It is async because most of the key interfaces from the Draive framework are asynchronous as well, and it will be required. Where do we start? Every single Draive-based application starts from the context. So we have to import ctx, which is a helper for managing contexts. Draive is a library which is heavily utilizing the context managers, and it is based on the structured concurrency concepts. So it provides the way of structuring the application within the scopes managed by scope managers from Python. So here we are creating a new context and enter it within the Python context manager to have access to the context variables and dependencies. So here we are in context. And after we leave this scope, we are out of context. So what it is required for? The context is propagating the state. So to have access to various configurations inside and to not repeat yourself and create any global state, we are using those to pass the state inside the application calls. And it is also used to propagate dependencies as well. So let's start from the example we are going to use here. So to call the OpenAI services to have some basic completion of text, we have to import and Draive integration with the OpenAI and get the OpenAI client. OpenAI client is the dependency which can be used to access OpenAI services. We have to put it into our context. So here we have dependencies, and we can define dependencies used in this context. So besides the OpenAI client, we have also to configure our chat endpoint, which is going to be an endpoint used for the LLM completion. So here we have also a state, which allows us to propagate state elements within the context. So what we are saying here is that we are entering the application with a new context where we have the OpenAI client as a dependency and configuration for OpenAI as a state. All of those will be accessible within this scope, and it won't be accessible outside of the scope. So here we can define a model which we are going to use to be GPT 3.5 Turbo. Okay, so in order to use the LLM completion and generate actual text, we can use one of the helper functions from Draive, which provide us high-level abstractions for various tasks like generating text and generating structured data, providing conversations, etc. So as we have generate text method imported now, we can use it here. And in order to use it, we have to provide instructions. Instructions are converted to system prompt for the OpenAI and equivalent for other service providers. So we can start basic. You are a helpful assistant. And one another thing we have to provide is our input. We can use simple greeting here. And as I mentioned, all of the key interfaces are asynchronous in Draive, so we have to await it. And we get the result, which will be a string since we are generating text. And since we have the result, we can simply print it. And let me clean up this thing. So there's one more thing missing. We have defined our dependency to the OpenAI client. We have defined the configuration for it, but we didn't define the actual implementation used by generate text to use the OpenAI. In order to do this, we can use the basic interface from Draive, which is called LMM. It is called LMM because we are supporting the multimodal content out of the box in Draive. And for the LMM, we can provide the invocation. We can provide the invocation to be OpenAI LMM invocation. That configures the lower level interface to be using the OpenAI services according to this configuration within this client. And this is the lowest level interface we are using in Draive in order to provide the LLM services. It is used by generate text helper function to generate actual text. So as we have set up everything properly, we have to provide the OpenAI services key and load it from the environment. So we can use also a helper function from Draive to do so. And here we have .env example, which is cloned to be a base for our .env file. And here in .env you have to provide your OpenAI key if you would like to follow this video. And going back to our code, we are loading the environment. We are launching on our main function, which enters a new context, providing the dependency of the OpenAI client, using the configuration for OpenAI to be GPT 3.5 Turbo, and we are defining the dependency or the implementation of our lowest level interface for accessing LLMs to be the OpenAI as well. And then we use the text generation helper. And let's use it. We are now hitting the OpenAI services and we get the result. That is the basics of the Draive framework. It is a framework based on the structured concurrency concepts, which provides the asynchronous interfaces and state propagation within the context to use the various methods, including the LLM services. One more thing to finish this video. I can show you that those contexts are not only to propagating stuff. Those are also used to provide the automatic diagnostics and metrics. If we set up our logging, which we can do within the default configuration provided from Draive, we can now launch it again to see something like this. Those contexts automatically provide various metrics and logs that are added to our application to allow us to track the process of computation and execution. Additionally, we are allowed to see the whole tree of calls with all the arguments and configurations within the LLM calls to see what was actually happening inside. That's all for this video. I encourage you to see more of the Draive framework videos, which are going to be expanding on those concepts and going into details more deeply.